Kyle Davidson makes a second trade in 3 days with Stan Bowman and the Oilers, and I think he got the better end of the bargain both times.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome on in to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcasting network, where we bring you your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. On today's episode, I'll get into all the details, and we'll also dish out a grade for the Blackhawks' second trade with the Edmonton Oilers in 3 days. I'll also discuss why there's no real downside in acquiring Andrew Mangiapane and what the lineup will look like without Dickinson and Dach in the picture. And then in segment 3, I'll get into a quick update on a 2024 first-round pick. But before I get into all of that, just a quick reminder, if you're watching on YouTube today, please go and hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. It's 100% free, will not cost you anything, and helps me out in a real big way in reaching my goal of 3,000 subscribers. All right, happy Thursday, Blackhawks fans. Wasting no time, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Just about an hour after I posted yesterday's episode, the Blackhawks made their second trade ahead of tomorrow's 2 p.m. Central Time trade deadline. We're now just over 24 hours removed from that, with Jason Dickinson unsurprisingly getting traded, but Colton Dach winds up going with him to the Edmonton Oilers, and in return, the Blackhawks net a 2027 conditional first-round pick. It is a top 12 protected selection. However, if the Oilers trade their 2028 first-round pick before the time the Blackhawks make that selection, it will turn into an unconditional first-round pick. And they also acquire 29-year-old winger Andrew Mangiapane, who is under contract through the end of next season with a $3.6 million cap hit. And as expected, the Blackhawks also retain, like they did with Connor Murphy, they retain half of Dickinson's $4.25 million cap hit, bringing that number just over $2 million through the remainder of this season. And altogether, Blackhawks fans, I think this is a really damn good return, pardon my language, for general manager Kyle Davidson. And I don't really see any true negatives from this trade, aside from the Blackhawks now having used all 3 of their salary retention spots, which could definitely make things more complicated regarding an Ilya Mikheyev trade, as he has a $4.04 million cap hit through the remainder of the season, as well as captain Nick Foligno, who's got a $4.5 million cap hit. So feels like if the Blackhawks are going to be moving either of those players to another team, they might have to take some money back, unless the team that they are working with has enough available cap space. But even then, I don't know if that's truly what they want to be paying for those 2 guys. But outside of that, I mean, for Jason Dickinson, we knew the likelihood of him getting traded ahead of this year's deadline was super high. As I broke down yesterday, it seemed like there was some more interest potentially in Ilya Mikheyev, just because of how deep the third line, bottom 6 center market is for sellers this time around. But still, it was always more likely than not that Dickinson was going to wind up getting traded, and we knew that retaining half of his salary was always going to be in the cards. Then for Colton Dach, yeah, it definitely was a surprise, although what I will say is Stan Bowman just cannot help himself, Blackhawks fans. Yet another former player of his that he acquired after trading for Connor Murphy on Monday. He was, of course, the Blackhawks general manager at the time when he shipped Nicholas Hjalmarsson to the then Arizona Coyotes in exchange for Connor Murphy and Laurent Dauphin. Well, Bowman was also the general manager for the Blackhawks in the 2021 NHL draft when they selected Colton Dach in the second round with the 62nd overall selection. So, I mean, this fits the bill for Stan Bowman, but still was unexpected for us Blackhawks fans. Although, if you're a regular listener or watcher of Locked On Blackhawks, I have mentioned on the show a couple of times with how frequently Colton Dach has been getting scratched lately, and with kind of the, I don't want to say ascension of Landon Slaggert, but he's definitely been playing much better, and it feels like he's found his niche role down on the 4th line and on the Blackhawks penalty kill. And with that happening, I just wondered if, and I said this on the show a couple of different times, one of Landon Slaggert and or Colton Dach could wind up getting traded. And both of those guys were selected by Stan Bowman when he was the Blackhawks general manager. I also wondered, because there was a mystery man situation, for those of you who may not be aware of how everything transpired on social media. It was known that the Blackhawks were sending Dickinson to Edmonton. It was also known that they were taking on Andrew Mangiapane's contract. And because of that, they were getting a 2027 protected first-round pick. Well, the mystery man wound up being Colton Dach, but I thought it was going to be either Dach, Slaggert, or Ethan Del Mastro, considering their ties to Stan Bowman. But for like an hour there on social media, we weren't really sure what that other piece was that was going to be included going back to Edmonton in this trade. And it winds up being Colton Dach, which it definitely sucks to see him go. And I really did appreciate his physical element that he provided on a nightly basis, right? 189 hits this year. That's 10th among all NHL players, first among all NHL rookies. But he just didn't really offer a whole lot outside of that. There just wasn't a lot of offensive upside with Colton Dach because he doesn't have a ton of playmaking skills, doesn't play with much speed whatsoever. It's just really the strong wrist shot that he possesses, which we didn't really get to see too often in his year and a half up in the NHL. And other than that, it's just really all about his size and his net front presence. And as I said, with his role just starting to become decreased, and ice time wasn't going to be any easier for Colton Dach down the stretch of the season, considering, young prospects like Anton Frandel, Sacha Boisvert, potentially Nick Lardis. Doesn't seem like Roman Kanserov is going to be signing his ELC. Metallurg Magnitogorsk is also the top team in the KHL, so a pretty good chance that they're playing late in the Gagarin Cup playoffs. Doesn't sound like the plan is for Kanserov to sign his ELC and join the Blackhawks before the end of this season, but still expecting him to come over to North America, and have been in good communication with him about the process. So feel pretty comfortable that he will be transitioning over to North America. It's just probably not going to be happening till the start of the 26-27 season. But regardless, the Blackhawks, their priority down the stretch of the season here, and it's why I was so upset with Kevin Korchinski not playing on Tuesday night in Winnipeg, it's to give the kids an opportunity. And Frandel is going to be arriving later in the season. That's the expectation for Boisvert as well. Nick Lardis could be getting another NHL opportunity. So those guys, with being, higher end prospects with a much higher upside than someone like Colton Dach, I'm sure they were going to get the opportunity. So receiving consistent ice time wasn't going to get any easier for Colton Dach, who had only dressed in 4 of the Blackhawks' last 11 games. So parting ways with him, it stinks to see a young player who's been developing in the system the last couple of years go, but I really only believe that Dach's upside here with the Blackhawks would have been as a fourth-line grinder. And then for Andrew Mangiapane, it's not been a very good last 2 seasons for him, to put it blankly. He's gotten worse with each passing season ever since scoring 35 goals as a member of the Calgary Flames and netting 55 points back in the 2021-2022 season. Last year, his lone campaign with the Washington Capitals recorded just 28 points, 14 goals, and 14 assists in 81 games. And so far this season, in 52 games with the Edmonton Oilers, before getting traded yesterday, he had only posted 7 goals and 7 assists for 14 points. And for someone who has a $3.6 million cap hit, that just simply wasn't good enough in Edmonton. The Oilers and Bowman were trying to get rid of his contract. They had placed him on waivers on Sunday. He wound up clearing on Monday. They assigned him down to the Bakersfield Condors of the AHL. So the writing was on the wall that Edmonton was trying to shed Andrew Mangiapane if possible, and the Blackhawks are certainly in a position where they can take on the remainder of his contract. And in fact, it actually could do them a solid in the 26-27 campaign. But it will be interesting altogether to see what the Blackhawks' plans are for Mangiapane, because since he has cleared waivers already, he can immediately report to the Rockford Ice Hogs of the AHL. He doesn't have to go through waivers once again, although considering his cap hit and that he just went through waivers a couple of days ago, probably was going to clear even if he had to go through that process once again. But the Blackhawks do not have to give him NHL minutes whatsoever. If they so choose, they can leave him down in the AHL, and they can actually do so for all of next season as well. And by doing so, they can help reach the salary cap floor with Mangiapane's $3.6 million cap hit. And also, like Ryan Ellis, but in a different sense, because Mangiapane is not retired, it helps the Blackhawks reach the salary cap floor and could potentially not take up an NHL roster spot for one of those young players. But there's also the opportunity that there's also the chance that the Blackhawks give Mangiapane the opportunity to kind of find his footing here once again. And those kind of buy low trades that Davidson has made in past years have worked out pretty well. I mean, Jason Dickinson, he was part of a salary cap dump from the Vancouver Canucks. The Blackhawks acquired him along with a 2024 second round pick in exchange for Riley Stillman. And then another deal with the Vancouver Canucks, a salary cap dump. It was Ilya Mikheyev in exchange for a 4th-round pick. And I mean, even thinking about Sam Lafferty when we acquired him the first time from the Buffalo Sabres and then went on to flip him along with Jake McCabe to the Toronto Maple Leafs for some good assets. Like, Davidson has a pretty good track record with these types of players. And that's not to say that Mangiapane is going to figure it out here in Chicago if they give him an opportunity. But what I'm saying is it has happened in the past, and there's no real downside if it doesn't, because again, the Blackhawks could just bury Mangiapane down in the AHL, which would help them reach the salary cap floor next season. And they could also just cut ties with him this summer if they so choose. They have a lot of options with Andrew Mangiapane, and I don't think any of them really are all that risky for Davidson. So I just feel like, again, altogether, there's just no downside in this trade. Plus, the Blackhawks get yet another 1st-round pick, which gives them 5 in their arsenal over the next 3 years. To me, this is a slam dunk by general manager Kyle Davidson. Like I said, Dach's future in Chicago, it was becoming more questionable by the day, and it was clear that he didn't really have much upside outside of being a bottom 6, probably more so of a 4th-line grinder. Jason Dickinson, we knew he was out the door, and they have the financial means and are in the situation to take on Andrew Mangiapane's contract. And of course, going back to the trade that I just talked about, when the Blackhawks acquired Dickinson from Vancouver in October of 2022, they got a 2nd-round pick to take on his contract. And now 4 years later, after Dickinson rekindled his career here in Chicago and has proved himself as one of the more underappreciated defensive centers and really sound penalty killers in the entire NHL, he's going to be a big help for Edmonton. He's going to jump into that 3rd-line center role. He and Adam Henrique give Edmonton some good depth centers in their bottom 6 behind Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. He's going to be a big part of their penalty kill, as will Connor Murphy, and those two have some good chemistry with one another, so that will be nice for Edmonton. But still, the Blackhawks got a 2nd-round pick to take on Jason Dickinson's contract back in 2022, and just 4 years later, sure, they also add Colton Dach in the deal. They take on Andrew Mangiapane's contract, which Edmonton was desperately trying to shed, but they still wind up with a 1st-round pick for Jason Dickinson. To me, this is an awesome return by general manager Kyle Davidson. And I know it's maybe not the biggest wowza return, but getting another 1st-round pick is absolutely massive. And in 2027, it could be utilized for the Blackhawks to take on or to draft another real high-end prospect that they like, or similar to the 2028 2nd-round pick that they just got in return for Connor Murphy, they could use it to try and bring on some more legitimate NHL roster pieces and better this team in a couple of years down the road. So Stan Bowman, man, I wish we could do more deals with him, because this guy, I'm not quite sure he understands the definition of value, but for the Blackhawks to have traded Colton Dach, Jason Dickinson, and Connor Murphy, and in exchange got a 2027 conditional 1st-round pick, a 2028 2nd-round pick, and Andrew Mangiapane, who could potentially help the team out in a couple of different ways. And even if he stinks, he could help them in terms of reaching the salary cap floor. Again, really well-struck bargain here by general manager Kyle Davidson. Let me know down below in the comment section if you feel the same way, Blackhawks fans. I don't know how I give this trade anything but an A. Again, there's just no real risk here for the Blackhawks. The only risk that I could see is like somehow Colton Dach turns into a real strong player for the Edmonton Oilers, and I don't think that's going to be the case. So let me know in the comments if you feel the same way about this trade as I do. Coming up in just a moment, though, Blackhawks fans, I'll break down what the Blackhawks lineup could look like over the final 21 games with Jason Dickinson and Colton Dach now out of the picture. But first, got to talk to you all about one of today's sponsors here on Locked On Blackhawks, which is Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but just wasn't the right fit, then you know how important this all is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed-sponsored jobs. And if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites, because Indeed-sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference so that you can spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results by using Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of the show, you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves over at Indeed.com/lockedon. All you got to do is go and visit Indeed.com/lockedon right now and make sure you support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you're hiring, go and do it the right way and do it with Indeed. Just a quick reminder that you can now join the Locked On Blackhawks Everydayer Club to get ad-free audio, access to our group chat on Discord, and much more. All you got to do is use the code DEADLINE in all caps ahead of tomorrow's trade deadline, and you'll get 1 month for entirely free. And you can easily find the link down in the description to sign up for the Locked On Blackhawks Everydayer Club right now. Segment 2 here on today's episode. Now that Jason Dickinson is no longer part of the team and Colton Dach is out of the picture as well, definitely wanted to go over how this trade impacts the Blackhawks forward group for the remainder of the season, which there's 21 games left on their schedule. First off, there's obviously a hole that needs to be filled at the third line center spot, and there's now a forward opening on that top penalty killing unit, as that's where Dickinson was slotted basically every night that he was suiting up. We're also going to learn much more about this when the Blackhawks hit the ice for practice at the newly branded Blackhawks Ice Center, which is absolutely mint, by the way. Blackhawks fans, highly recommend that you all get down there before the end of the season, probably more so when it gets a little warmer and it's nice to walk around Chicago a little bit. But man, that place looks absolutely pristine, and am very stoked that that's kind of what it's turned into and is now the home of the Chicago Steel starting next year. It's absolutely awesome. The Blackhawks didn't hold practice yesterday. They'll be back on the ice here today. We'll get an idea of what the forward lines are going to look like and also what the plans are for Andrew Mangiapane. We haven't really gotten any word as of the time of this recording. But as far as Dickinson's third line center spot, I feel like there's two pretty clear-cut candidates to fill that spot. One of them is Ryan Green, who I've always felt like was a really good option to be a bottom six center for the Blackhawks this year. However, he's obviously had some decent connection and chemistry along with Connor Bedard on the top line. I mentioned on yesterday's show, I've thought he's looked really sharp since returning from the Olympic break, where he was scratched in the Blackhawks final game, going into that break. I think a third-line center spot makes a lot of sense for Ryan Green. However, I just wonder, considering the continuous struggles of Andre Burakovsky, and between Burakovsky and Green, it's been Green who's definitely looked more competent up on that top line with Connor Bedard as of late. They've been working really well with one another. I just wonder if that's enough to keep Ryan Green up on that top line for the time being. And if that does wind up happening, I'm expecting Oliver Moore to slide into that third line center spot. And I really do feel like this could be the spot of the future for Oliver Moore if they want him playing down the middle, which I feel like he's been more effective when he's played the center ice position this season. And with his speed, he has the ability to become a really good defender. It hasn't maybe been as strong of a defensive season as I would have liked from Oliver Moore, but he is still a rookie in the NHL, and he's changed positions a couple of different times, never had really one consistent role. He's been up in the lineup, down in the lineup, so I definitely think that plays a part of it as well. But ultimately, I do feel like when they moved more to the fourth line center spot a couple of games ago, they were kind of grooming him to get ready to jump into the third line center spot once Jason Dickinson winds up getting traded. So I'm expecting Oliver Moore to get that first look at the 3C spot with Dickinson no longer around, but could also be Ryan Green. Again, like I said, though, we'll know for sure once the Blackhawks get on the ice for practice today. As far as that top penalty kill unit, though, while Ilya Mikheyev is still here, which we're not 100% sure that he's still going to be when the Blackhawks play their next game on Friday night, just a couple of hours after the deadline, but considering they don't have any more salary retention spots, considering they do want to re-sign Mikheyev, although that might be easier said than done, decent chance, it seems like at this point, that he could remain with the Blackhawks for the end of the season. But if they feel like there's no chance to re-sign him, they're going to have to try to work something out over the next 24 hours. But as long as Mikheyev is here, he's going to be on that top penalty kill unit. But as far as who the other forward will be, definitely has to be a center iceman, because Mikheyev is a wing. You're not going to have him taking those draws in the defensive zone. The two most likely candidates are Frankie Nazar and Ryan Green. In my opinion, Green's been getting shorthanded ice time all season long. I think he's a pretty good candidate to step into that top PK spot. Frank Nazar has been used on the penalty kill all season long. And then Teuvo Teravainen on the second unit, I think, is probably going to remain as a staple on the wing there. And The other one who doesn't go on this top unit, whether it be Nazar or Green, will probably get more time while shorthanded down on that second unit. And it's obviously going to be a test for the Blackhawks' top-ranked PK, which is now down two of its biggest shorthanded weapons, with Connor Murphy and Jason Dickinson now both being a part of the Edmonton Oilers. Will be interesting to see if the Blackhawks penalty kill will be able to keep it up. I'm not expecting them to be killing off penalties at quite the same rate without those two crucial pieces around anymore, but will be interesting to see what kind of success that group can still find without those two key pieces around. As far as what the Blackhawks will do with Andrew Mangiapane, again, we'll have a better idea, I'm sure, this afternoon. We haven't heard anything in terms of whether he's going straight to the AHL or whether they want to give him an NHL opportunity immediately. But as far as a numbers perspective, the Blackhawks do have the room to give Mangiapane a look before guys like Frondell, possibly Boisvert, and maybe Nick Lardis as well arrive later on for the final stretch, because by subtracting Dickinson and Dach from this forward group, that leaves the Blackhawks with only 12 forwards on their active roster. Ryan Green, Andre Burakovsky, and Connor Bedard obviously were the top line last time out on Tuesday in Winnipeg. Ryan Donato, Frank Nazar, and Teuvo Teravainen were the second line. Tyler Bertuzzi was skating on the third line with Ilya Mikheyev as the wings. Jason Dickinson was in that 3C spot. That's where I'm putting Oliver Moore right now. And then down on the quote-unquote fourth line, you still have Nick Foligno and Landon Slaggert. Foligno probably going to be jumping into the center spot now that Moore is up on the third line and the Blackhawks are needing him to take some more faceoffs. That leaves Foligno and Slaggert down on the fourth line, while Sam Lafferty is the 12th and final forward on the NHL roster. So they could give Mangiapane a shot down in the bottom six and then, go and keep Sam Lafferty in that healthy, scratching, extra forward type of role. I do feel like there's a pretty good chance that happens. I mean, this would be a good time to roll Mangiapane out and see what he has in store, see if a change of scenery does him any good. And again, like I mentioned in segment one, this type of situation has worked well for Kyle Davidson and the Blackhawks in the past. So we'll see if they do end up giving Andrew Mangiapane that opportunity right out of the gate. There is how trading Jason Dickinson and Colton Dach is going to impact the Blackhawks forward group for the remainder of the season. From a numbers perspective, they certainly have the room to give Andrew Mangiapane that opportunity over these final 21 games before, guys like Anton Frondell and Sacha Boisvert arrive, probably later on this month or in early April. But coming up in just a moment here, before I close out today's episode, speaking of Sacha Boisvert, still got to get into a quick update on his end of season plans that we heard about yesterday. But first, got to talk to you all about another one of today's sponsors here on Locked On Blackhawks, which is Factor. Cold days, packed schedules, and big goals. That's winter. And when there's not a lot of time to cook, eating well can feel like another thing on the to-do list. That's where Factor comes in. Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and handcrafted by chefs so that you can eat well without the planning, prepping, or cooking. And the ingredients stand out with lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole foods, and healthy fats, and no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, and no refined seed oils. Go and head on over to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off, and then use our code LockedOnNHL50 off, and you'll get 50% off and free breakfast for an entire year. Go and eat like a pro this month with Factor. New subscribers only, and it varies by plan, and you get one free breakfast item per box for 1 year while the subscription is active. Again, head on over to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off and free breakfast for 1 year. Just want to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. Segment 3, before I close things out, Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times dropped an article yesterday basically confirming that 2024 first-round pick, the 18th overall selection in that NHL draft, Sacha Boisvert, will be turning pro after the conclusion of his sophomore season with Boston University, which could be coming up here real soon considering their slim chances of making this year's NCAA tournament. Blackhawks assistant general manager Mark Eaton had a conversation with Ben Pope that he wrote about, and Eaton and the Blackhawks are pretty convinced that Boisvert's game is ready to make the leap to the pro level, and they feel like with the way that he goes about his business, he kind of has a pro hockey style, even though it hasn't been an ideal second season of college hockey for Boisvert in his first year with the Terriers. In 24 games, he's only recorded 3 goals and 13 assists for 16 points. And with the way that the kid was firing the biscuit around last year as a freshman with North Dakota, 3 goals. I mean, no chance I saw this coming with the shot that he possesses. And I believe he only has 2 points over his last 6 games. It hasn't been very good from Boisvert. It hasn't been very good from BU in general, but I do agree with Mark Eaton here in a sense that with Boisvert's 6'2" frame, kind of the hard-nosed style of play that he likes to play with, responsible on both sides of the ice, I do feel like that skill set is ready to translate to the professional level right now. And honestly, just given BU's lack of success this season, given Boisvert's lack of success there, I do wonder if he were to remain in college hockey for another season, if he would consider hitting the transfer portal once again and starting fresh with yet another program. And if that was going to be the case, or even if he was willing to run it back with Boston University, I just feel like there's more downside of Boisvert staying in college, and there's more risk of him having another season like this, and then the development kind of goes wayward. Whereas I know, as I mentioned yesterday, the Blackhawks don't have like the best history of rushing guys to the professional level, but I really don't think this is like a rushing it situation here with Sacha Boisvert. I really do think it's justified to get him under guidance of the Blackhawks organization, of a professional hockey team, whether that be the Blackhawks in the NHL or the Rockford Ice Hogs in the AHL for his first full professional campaign next year. I do think ultimately that is the right decision, even though it hasn't been a very sound season from Boisvert thus far. But like I said, the entry-level contract sure sounds like he's going to be signing it whenever he gets the opportunity once his sophomore season comes to a close. And I broke down Boston University's schedule as well as the rest of the Blackhawks NCAA prospect schedules just a couple of days ago. There's only 1 game left in the regular season for Boston University. It comes this Saturday, and then the Hockey East Conference tournament is right around the corner, beginning on next Wednesday, March 11th. So depending on what happens with BU in the conference tournament, it feels like they might have to win the Hockey East Conference tournament to make the NCAA tournament. There's a chance that we could see Sacha Boisvert sign that entry-level contract or maybe even make his NHL debut as soon as March 17th or March 19th against the Minnesota Wild. If not, then maybe the following week, assuming that they don't work their way into the NCAA tournament. But very excited to see Sacha Boisvert. He's someone that I absolutely loved what I saw from his freshman season with North Dakota. Obviously wasn't able to keep up producing at that same rate so far this season, but I do think his game will translate over well to the NHL, and I feel like he has a pretty good chance of becoming a middle six, strong two-way forward for the Blackhawks here in their rebuild. So there is the latest that we have on Sacha Boisvert. That's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Make sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already, and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. If you want to check me out on social media, you can do so basically anywhere at Jack Bushman 2. My Strictly Blackhawks account, that can be found on X at Talkin' Hockey, to get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your days. Happy Thursday, and I'll see y'all next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.